and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
And I'm Ann Northrup.
And we do want to alert you at the top of the show that for those of you watching on Free Speech, we are in pledge mode, at least until May 12th, maybe for another week. And that means they're going to give us just a Saturday night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time telecast and a Tuesday afternoon telecast. So check your schedules.
But you can find us online at any time at Blip TV, or get our video or audio podcast through our website at gayusatv.org.
And I want to give a shout out to some of our Free Speech viewers in Colorado, because I'm just back from the Colorado State University Veterinary Medicine School, speaking about gay stuff, thanks to Dr. Julie and Shauna there at the Spectrum LGBT group. And I want to tell you, vets are very nice people. It was very nice to be with you.
Coloradans are nice people.
Yes, and maybe in general.
Yeah. And they're getting nicer in the United States of America to us, where this week in Delaware, the House of Representatives there passed a marriage equality bill, and that moves it on to the Senate.
And in Rhode Island, there are just 5 Republicans in the state Senate of 38 members, but all of them are supporting marriage equality.
And they're supposed to vote as we are taping. We haven't heard yet, so you may know more than we, but we'll tell you what we know as of now. What we do know is that the Boy Scouts of America has come up with yet another proposal on their gay scouts, which would involve letting them be openly gay as scouts, but not as scout masters. So, of course, the brouhaha continues.
In Columbus, Ohio, a Catholic high school teacher is fired when officials discover she is a lesbian. Wait till we tell you how they discovered she's a lesbian.
Man.
You're gonna wanna leave the Catholic Church.
I love this story. But there's some legal twists to this, too. The new Undersecretary of the Air Force is an out gay man.
The French marriage equality bill, including the right of gay couples to adopt, gets final passage amidst violent protests from the right wing.
Scary stuff. We'll show you some nicer stuff from New Zealand. You know, last week we told you they'd passed a marriage law, but we didn't have time to show you a couple of really nice things that we are going to make time for this week. Yeah. A member of Parliament brilliantly and hilariously defending the bill, and what happened when the bill passed.
And in Rio de Janeiro, we had a big win in court for same-sex couples seeking to marry.
Andy has been to the theater again around his Colorado trip. He's going to review a new play about an Irish gay man adopting a child from Uganda, and tell us about Nathan Lane in the gayest play on Broadway, The Nance.
Yes, the Irish guy did not adopt Nathan Lane. Okay.
And we'll show you a clip from a good new movie, too, that opens this weekend here in New York.
But we do start in Delaware, where the House there voted 23-18 to support marriage equality, and it is on to the Senate there.
Yeah. Now, our friend in Delaware, Steve, tells me that the Senate's a little dicey and is going to require some work. They're not sure they have all the votes yet.
Get on the right side of history. That's what you need to do.
Well, it's not unlike Illinois, where we're stalled, still trying to round up an appropriate number of votes in the House there. Although in Illinois, Representative Ken Duncan, who is the chair of the Black Caucus in the House, has announced that he is co-sponsoring the marriage bill, which is good news.
And in Rhode Island, the state Senate committee went 7-4 for marriage equality. And as we noted at the top of the show, all 5 Republicans in the Senate, there's only 5 of them, are out of 38, supporting same-sex marriage. So we got to get the Democrats all in gear.
Now, the bill they have passed in the Senate Judiciary Committee that has already passed the other house of the legislature has some big religious exemptions in it, including religious organizations not having to service weddings. You know, it goes beyond just the marriage
how do they define
ceremony.
a religious organization?
Well, that's a good question.
We went through this in New York as well.
Yeah, but it requires some closer look. They did defeat an attempt to force a public referendum on marriage equality. That was also proposed by the right wing, by the marriage opponents. They thought if they could take it to the people, they would have a better chance. But in fact, polls in Rhode Island consistently show above 60% support at this point. So I don't think that would have been a problem. But the Senate, as we are taping on Wednesday afternoon, is supposed to vote today, and it is expected to pass. The committee vote was supposed to be the tough part, and the governor, of course, has promised to sign it. So by the time you see this, you may be ahead of us, and Rhode Island may have gone ahead and legalized marriage equality.
And in the midst of Nevada advancing their bill to repeal the constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage, and this is going to take 2 consecutive sessions, State Senator Kevin Atkinson came out and he came out.
He said, you know me as a black man, you don't know I'm black and I'm gay. He talked about his parents' interracial marriage. And the Senate in Nevada has made the first step. They passed by a vote of 12-9 the proposal which would repeal the constitutional amendment in the state to forbid same-sex marriage. And they're the first state that is making steps to repeal their own constitutional amendments. There are some legal efforts in the courts to declare unconstitutional some of these unconstitutional amendments.
Sure.
But this is the first state legislature to make a move in this direction. Right. You're right, this must now pass the state assembly, then both again in 2015, and then a public referendum in 2016.
Unless the Supreme Court helps us out with a nice decision, but we're not counting on that. Now, there are consequences for coming out for same-sex marriage. Senator Rob Portman, who's a Republican in Ohio, U.S. Senator, his rating has dipped 13% among Republicans after coming out for marriage equality, came out because of his gay son.
I suspect, and I've been wrong before, that will be a temporary dip.
A lot of true believers on the other side.
Yes, and wait till we get to Paraguay, and I have to apologize about that. Meanwhile, in California, a federal district court judge has ruled that a lesbian couple can challenge the Defense of Marriage Act as an unconstitutional deprivation of their equal rights. This is a binational lesbian couple who are trying to acquire the right for the non-U.S. member of the couple to be treated as a married partner as heterosexual couples are. And we're trying to do something about that in Congress. But meanwhile, this court case has been allowed to proceed where we would get rid of DOMA in the court there, as we're trying to do in the Supreme Court.
And this is the week we're all supposed to call our members of Congress and say we want to be in the Immigration Reform Act so that people can bring their foreign partners in. Now, Ann and I had a little contretemps last week over marriage, civil unions, domestic partnerships, all that kind of stuff, because in some of these states where they pass same-sex marriage, they say you can't have a civil union anymore. That doesn't exist anymore. It's not an option. So all I'm arguing from the government side is that people have options. And we hear from feminist viewers who say, I don't want to be a part of the institution of marriage, but I want these kinds of rights. It's not like I don't support same-sex marriage. I've been working for it for about 15, 20 years now. But I do think people need other options, and we have to recognize that people have different ways of committing themselves to each other.
Well, I'm all in favor of options, but to me, options means different levels of rights and responsibilities.
If you want that, yes, folks, marriage is the only thing that's going to transfer all over the world. That's true,
right,
unless everybody starts recognizing civil unions. But some people only want a level of domestic partnership, and that goes away for a lot of people.
And again, I'm in favor of those options. What I don't understand still is if if the civil union you're talking about is identical to marriage.
It's not identical because then people who choose to only have a civil union have to understand this, that they may lose certain rights because it is not as transferable as a marriage is. It's not. It's not recognized elsewhere, usually, except in New York City.
Well, when I blindsided you about this last week, my question to you was, how would the civil union differ from marriage in terms of rights and responsibilities?
And that is how it differs, unless we get the whole country to embrace all these options, which would be a long, hard slog. But I think people are going to discover as time goes on. You know, we've worked so hard for marriage, and everybody feels very validated by having marriage. I think as time goes on, all couples, straight and gay, are going to be looking at having different options and levels of commitment.
I couldn't agree more.
All right.
I still don't think we've cleared up the discussion we had last week, but that's a different issue. And just before we leave marriage and immigration rights, Congress is beginning to have hearings on the proposed immigration reform bill. And one of the people who testified last week was former Representative Jim Colby, Republican of Arizona, who was out when he was in Congress. And he showed up to say, look, I have a partner of 8 years standing who's from Panama, and we've had to go back and forth to Panama. He's had some legal rights here and not others.
They have an 8-year relationship. His partner had to spend a year outside. Now he has a green card.
They're getting married May 18th in the District of Columbia.
Colby, ever the Republican, called it economically damaging for people to have to leave their businesses to go live abroad. Well, that's one perspective. His fiance's name is Hector Alfonso.
Okay.
All right, and the Archbishop of Detroit told those who support same-sex marriage, you can't go to communion anymore. Another one.
Okay.
That's nice.
Just empty out those churches. That's fine with me.
And this New Zealand guy, who we're going to show you later, is supposed to be on Ellen. Has he already done it?
Not that I know of, but I don't watch the show, so I don't
Okay.
know. Let's move on to the Boy Scouts.
What are they thinking? They're trying to split the difference. So what did they say? The Boy Scouts,
They said, well, what's our real objection here? Our real objection here is those adult gays who are going to molest the youngsters. So it's okay if the kids are gay. It's just
we don't throw them out of school, public school, for being gay, do we?
No.
Well, maybe we could have them in the Scouts.
Yeah, and just not the adults, because, they're predators.
But we can't have older Scouts talking to younger Scouts. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. It's completely convoluted. You either get rid of this thing or you don't. And I think people should form another organization to help kids.
Well, someone came up, with this very clever graphic.
Is anybody
to
liking this?
Personify
look
this.
at it.
In a nutshell, Boy Scouts proposed new policy on gay scouts. 1, join. 2, ascend. 3, reach Eagle. 4, reach 18 years of age. 5, apply to leadership. 6, get kicked out. Because that's the real thing. You may think of Scoutmasters and Scouts separately, but the fact is that people join the Boy Scouts, do work their way up, do become Eagle Scouts, and then want to be Scout leaders as adults. And they're saying, you can't do that. We're cutting you off.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
Now, Bill Clinton.
And they haven't done anything for atheists yet either.
Bill Clinton has graduated. He is, after signing the Defense of Marriage Act and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, GLAAD has now made him an advocate for change because he doesn't support his own policies. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I want to move on to sports. Remember the Rutgers coach who got fired, Mike Rice, the basketball coach, because he was throwing basketballs at his players and screaming homophobic slurs at them. Well, one of the people I wanted to talk to at the time was Stephen Goldstein, who used to run Garden State Equality and just recently left there to go to work for Rutgers.
He's got a big job
as a PR communications guy. I didn't get around to calling him, and then he put out a press release, and he says he offered to work with Rutgers. When this story broke, he called up the administration, he sent them notes, he repeatedly offered to help them out on all this.
Before it broke or after it broke?
As it was breaking,
Okay.
as this was coming out. He didn't know about it when they were considering it last fall. And they just ignored him. They never
And he put a
turned
press
to him.
release about
Yes.
this? Does he still have a job?
Well, he hasn't put out a press release saying he doesn't.
I guess they feel they can't fire him.
Well, I don't know, but it's so classic that they go through this and they don't turn to the best resource that they have on staff who knows about things.
The president seems like a bit of a boob, out of touch.
Oh, man, well, he's the Christie plant. Meanwhile, in other sports...
Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey.
Yes, and really, I want him to disappear. Meanwhile, in women's basketball, the top college women's basketball player in the country, Brittany Griner from Baylor, a very religious, conservative school, they've just been through the draft to take the college players into pro teams, and in this process, she starts making reference to her female partner. And people say, oh, you're coming out. She said, well, actually, I've always been out, and it hasn't been a secret. And here I've been at Baylor, this conservative school, and it hasn't been a problem. And
if you're good enough, I guess it's not.
No, if you're a woman, it's not. That's the difference, because no one cares, no one gets upset.
Oh, come on. There have been some problems in the past. Who was that coach?
Renee Portland,
right, there you are.
Pittsburgh. But you know, this is great that she's doing fine. But meanwhile, the men in athletics are still having to grapple with this.
But the Attorney General of New York, Eric Schneiderman, has announced an agreement with the National Football League to help them strengthen their policies against discrimination based on sexual orientation. This is going to be a whole training program that's going to be ongoing for prospective players, for people coming in, for people who are there already, or maybe
posters in the locker room,
all that kind of stuff. They're going to try to make it a better environment. All they need now is someone to come out.
Well, in fact, in today's New York Times, someone did. A guy named Alan Gendreau, who was at Middle Tennessee State. He was a place kicker for their football team. And he was a really good place kicker until about his senior year, when he wasn't doing so well and the team wasn't winning. So he didn't look to have an NFL career. He went into coaching and kids and whatever. And then when they saw him as a kicker in these kids programs, they said, you should be trying out for the NFL. So now he's considering trying out for the NFL, and he is an out gay man, and he was out in college, and we'll see whether he gets a fair shot at the NFL.
Now, a guy named Alfred Blue, who's a running back for LSU, did come out about being anti-gay.
Oh, yeah.
He said, ain't no little boys out there between them lines, so if you gay, we look at you as sissy, and on and on and on and on. Within, 10 minutes? They turned this
most.
They turned this guy around and said, no, we don't talk that way anymore. So he said, I understand my comments may have sounded insensitive to those who read the article, but I in no way meant to belittle any person's way of life and feel that everyone deserves a chance to become whatever they may be.
Okay, thank you. All right, I want to get to some political news. Representatives Jared Polis and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, Democrat and Republican in Congress, have reintroduced the Student Non-Discrimination Act, which outlaws bullying, harassment, discrimination against LGBT students. Not given a huge chance of passing.
It's too bad.
There's some thought that they could insert it in a much larger omnibus education
maybe in the Defense Appropriations Bill.
Well, why not?
And then the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which is our, just covers employment in this country and has been around for 100 years, is being introduced in the House and in the Senate this week.
They think that it stands a good chance in the Senate.
It better.
And not in the House, but they're now starting to talk about a discharge petition in the House.
To get everybody on the record. That'd be nice.
Just to get the bill on the floor for a vote.
Right.
Because they think they may have the votes. They may have enough Republicans who would go along with it. And that it's just the leadership stalling it. Well, we'll see whether we get any help from the Log Cabin Club, the gay Republicans. They say that they're starting a new, more aggressive push.
Going to allow more autonomy for their chapters in being aggressive.
They're going to be more aggressive towards the Republican Party on the state level in particular, and they've come up with a new logo.
Let's take a look. There it is. It's like a house, like a log cabin with a star underneath the eaves, and under that, an equal sign. Everybody's getting into the act. Is HRC suing them?
I don't know.
They want equality at HRC.
I think it's a nice little melding of an actual log cabin with the logs
I see.
and the equal
Well, there you
sign.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
But if you want to find out more about their new aggressiveness, you can check out their website at logcabin.org. They have also announced. Do you remember Fred Malek? Are you old enough to remember him
Yes.
as a Nixon
Yes.
assassin?
Yes.
He is now supporting equal marriage rights.
What did I say? Everybody's getting into the act. Now,
You know what he was known as? I love reading this. He was known as Nixon's Jew counter. Because
not Rabbi Baruch Korf.
no, the Nixon was very anti-Semitic, and
yes.
and he and Fred
And everything
Malek's Fred Malek's job was to count the number of Jews in a particular department, and then they would start firing people.
Oh my God! It sounds like the Ivy League schools in the old days when they
Well,
had their quotas. They would
A
let too
lot
many
farther back than Fred Malek.
Now I don't know if this guy is Republican, Democrat, Jewish, Christian, whatever, or atheist, but Eric Fanning, who has been a career civilian Defense Department official, has been confirmed by the Senate. He's an out gay man as the #2 in the Air Force, as the undersecretary there.
He worked for the House Armed Services Committee. He worked in the White House. He's worked most recently for the Department of the Navy, and now he's switching over to the Air Force, and Senate confirmed him as an undersecretary. Very, very good.
We had some. You have any more politics?
Well,
there?
the governor of Montana, Steve Bullock, has signed the bill repealing the sodomy law there, which is good news.
And the township of Kalamazoo has banned discrimination on the basis of gender identity, sexual orientation, or genetic information. Now, the city of Kalamazoo did it a while ago, and then it was upheld by a referendum by the voters in '09. So there's that.
But bad news from Pocatello, Idaho, hometown of Judy Garland.
Oh, really?
No.
No, she sang that song.
Yes, I was born in a trunk.
Where were the Gum sisters from?
Oh,
now you
why
got
did
me.
you have to ask me that?
Okay.
Anyway, the Pocatello, Idaho City Council, by a vote of 4-3, has rejected a non-discrimination law. They had a big debate over it. They say, maybe mediation, whatever, but
They must
not
have been
good.
influenced by Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, who blamed the massacre at Boston and the Newtown massacre on the government's own hostility to the institution of the family. Ignoring, of course, that the perpetrators in these cases had supportive parents.
I was going to say, his family, they're still defending him and saying it was a put-up job. Hey, here I think is a headline. A Senate committee in Texas, by a vote of 5-0, has approved repeal of the Texas sodomy law.
Finally.
Yeah, well, we'll see whether it goes any farther.
Well, wait a
than
minute.
that.
Montana did that, right?
Yes, and the governor just signed it, but
Right.
Montana is not Texas. Truly.
I don't know. That senator's getting out of there, Montana, that Democrat.
Well, and as long as we're in Texas, we should probably note that the Travis County, Texas District Attorney, out lesbian Rosemary Lemberg, has pleaded guilty to driving under the influence and has received a sentence of 45 days in jail. And someone has filed a petition to fire her because when she was arrested, she was cursing, kicking at, and spitting at the cops who arrested her.
I've got
Not good.
I've got some restroom news.
Okay.
Philadelphia has got a new bill for all new buildings to have gender-neutral restrooms, which would help a lot with transgenders going into this room or that room. And then in Washington, a McDonald's there is supporting transgender rights with a message about bathrooms that says we respect the rights of all our customers to use the bathroom of their choice, where they feel based on their gender identity.
That sign has actually been up for a few years, but we just noticed it.
Oh well.
And next week on Tuesday, April 30th, the Empire State Pride Agenda here in New York will be taking its members and others to Albany for its annual lobby day. And this year, the target of lobbying is the attempt to pass the GENDA bill, the Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Act. If you want to join that trip to Albany, try prideagenda.org for information about that on Tuesday.
And in California, there was a gun club that didn't want to honor the lifetime membership of Allison Katia, K-A-T-I-A, Katia Ryder, because when she signed up, she was a man. So they told her she'd have to pay a new fee for another life.
Katia.
Katia, another lifetime membership. She sued him. Took her a long time, but she won.
Good for her. The North American Interfraternity Conference has voted to include Delta Lambda Phi, the oldest gay, bisexual, and progressive men's fraternity, in its membership. They've been around, Delta Lambda Phi has been around since 1986. It has 30 chapters around the country and about 500 members. And they're now an official member of the National Fraternity Council.
Well, now, our governor's consort does not have an official relationship with him. They refer her, Sandra Lee of the Food Channel Network, as, you know, as his domestic partner. But there was a ruling that she can now fly on state-owned aircraft at taxpayer expense when he's traveling on official business. So that's progress, I guess.
Not so progressive as Columbus, Ohio, the Catholic school there, which has fired a lesbian phys ed teacher. You want to tell the...
Well, should we just run the piece and let the whole thing unfold about how it all came out?
Here is a local news report on her firing.
I was totally shocked. I mean, I think it was just one of those where just everything was just drained out of me.
A Catholic high school teacher fired. She says it's because she's gay, and now thousands are trying to help get her job back with an online petition. The Bishop Watterson phys ed teacher talked to NBC4 today about why she was fired and what might be next.
She was fired after an obituary for her mother listed the name of a woman as her partner. And we've received several emails and messages on Facebook about this story. Our Mike Bowersock spoke to the teacher today and is live in Clintonville with the latest here. Mike?
A lot of attention. There are now more than 7,000 signatures on a petition of people who want to see her get her job back here at the high school. There is a possibility now, actually, that someone could be criminally charged in all of this.
Bishop Watterson is an amazing place to be. Wow. The staff, the faculty. It's a very positive environment.
But not for Carla Hale anymore. The coach and physical education teacher was fired after 19 years after it became public she's a lesbian.
If it wouldn't have been for my mom's obituary and my partner's name being Julie and not Chris or Pat or whomever, I wouldn't be in this situation right now. It'd be a Wednesday afternoon, 8th period badminton tournament.
After the obituary, she was called into an office and told an anonymous parent had complained. Then on Holy Thursday, she was fired for what is known as Diocesan Policy 45116.1, which states that Catholic school personnel are expected to be examples of moral behavior, and her spousal relationship violates the moral laws.
There probably honestly wouldn't be a lot of teachers working there then, because if you go there, then Catholic Church doesn't promote divorce, living with a heterosexual partner out of marriage, birth control.
Since her termination, a petition has started which includes many former students who are coming out in support of her, and there could be legal ramifications. Her attorney is exploring whether to file a complaint with the city.
In most parts of the state, it is perfectly legal to fire someone on the basis of their sexual orientation. We're fortunate in Columbus to have a municipal ordinance that was passed in 2008 that does protect people, and there are no exceptions in that ordinance for religious institutions.
The Columbus Community Relations Commission would take up the issue if a complaint were filed. It is a misdemeanor charge. I did speak to Napoleon Bell. He is the director of that commission today. He said the person who actually fired her, who said that, "You're fired," would be the one who would be charged. Her termination notice was signed by the principal. Today, the Columbus Diocese spokesman would not comment on the case, claiming it is a personnel issue. We are live in Clintonville. I'm Mike Bowersock, NBC4.
It's absolutely disgraceful the way the church acts, and she really is on top of it. She says, you don't do this to others who have a lot of your sins. And it's just so good on her, and I hope she wins her case. There's no blanket exemption for religious groups and discrimination. She's not teaching religion in that school.
But you know that they will go into court and argue a separation of church and state and their right to do that.
Let them keep cracking down on the nuns until nobody goes to church. Want to let people know that we've told you about the murder of Lou Rispoli out in Queens in October. Still an unsolved crime. A gay guy, a beloved gay guy. There's going to be a concert for him on May the 3rd at Greenwich House at 8 o'clock in Manhattan.
Coming up soon is the Exxon annual shareholders meeting. There is again a proposal to add non-discrimination regulations to Exxon. They've buried it on page 69 of their shareholders booklet, but our side wants people to vote for the amendment and against the board members who are proposed.
This is why we need an executive order from the president, because a lot of these business people do business as federal contractors.
Exactly.
And that would cover them.
Yes, it would. And also in the federal realm, we didn't have time for this last week, but a judge in wherever, a military judge, has ruled that prosecutors really have to go the extra mile in prosecuting Bradley Manning, the WikiLeaks guy, that prosecutors must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Private Manning had reason to believe that the files could be used to harm the United States or to aid a foreign power, not just that he released the files. And I think that's a much more appropriate standard.
Some international news.
Please.
Peter, we tell you that same-sex marriage is going through in the United Kingdom, but Peter Tatchell, the activist over there, says it could be scuppered by the House of Lords, despite a 225-vote majority in the House of Commons. They can delay it for a year unless the government invokes the Parliament Act, and they're going to debate it next month.
He, by the way, Peter Tatchell, had his meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Justin Welby.
Yes, and Welby said to him, gay people are not intrinsically different from straight people, but our relationships are different. No, they're not.
And unless I drop dead in the next hour, we will have demonstrated against Jeremy Irons in New York, and we'll tell you about it next week.
Yeah, France is scary. Why, of all the places in the world where this debate about marriage equality is going on, France is where it is turning into violent demonstrations against us.
It's about politics.
Yes.
They just elected a leftist, François Hollande, as the president, and he's been unpopular almost from the get-go because the country's in trouble, and this is their way of finding an issue that they can attack him on. But I have to think that the opposition isn't very bright if they're letting themselves be led by somebody called Brigitte Bardot. Barjot, is that it?
Yeah,
Barjot.
as the play on
But
Bardot.
the vote in France was 321 to 225, and the weddings are going to get started in June. So it's going forward. But there have been gay bashings, and there was violence in the chamber that day.
Yes, it's really ugly. My optimistic prediction about Paraguay turned out to be wrong. We told you last week that they were having a presidential election last weekend, and the main candidate had said really ugly stuff about gay people.
No, he said he was going to shoot himself in the private parts if his son came out. Well, so
he also compared us to monkeys.
I'm rooting for your son to come out.
Well, I thought that, there was talk that this was getting him in trouble with the electorate. Nonetheless, he was elected president of Paraguay. Wouldn't advise going there soon.
No.
But you can
go to Uruguay.
Yes, where marriage equality is legal. Brazil, the state of Rio de Janeiro, has legalized conversion of civil unions to marriage.
Yes, this is the kind of conversion that we're in favor of.
Yeah. Now, we didn't have time last week, and we're getting tighter this week, so we'll hurry up and show you what happened in New Zealand. First, we want to show you the member of parliament who got up and talked about marriage equality, Maurice Williamson. And
A conservative.
You'll see in this clip a woman in a rainbow striped dress. She is an out lesbian member of parliament, so they're focusing on her a lot.
This has gone viral, but enjoy it.
The Honourable Maurice Williamson. Speaker, I too will be taking a split call with my colleague Jamie Lee Ross, as sort of the young and the vibrant versus the old and the boring. And sir, and members of the House will be forced to choose which one is which, sir. Sir, I want to first of all congratulate Louisa Wall for this bill. And I want to say, sir, that the good news about the years in this Parliament is you learn to deflect all of the dreadful sort of fire and brimstone accusations that are going to happen, sir. I've had a reverend in my local electorate call the gay onslaught will start the day after this bill is passed. Sir, we're really struggling to know what the gay onslaught will look like. We don't know if it'll come down the Pakuranga Highway as a series of troops, or whether it'll be a gas that flows in over the electorate and locks us all in. I also, sir, had a Catholic priest tell me that I was supporting an unnatural act. I found that quite interesting, coming from someone who's taken an oath of celibacy for his whole life. I always say celibacy. OK, we'll go with celibacy. OK, I haven't done it, so I don't know what it's about. I also had a letter telling me I would burn in the fires of hell for eternity, and that was a bad mistake because I've got a degree in physics. I used the thermodynamic laws of physics. I put in my body weight and my humidity and so on. I assumed the furnace to be at 5,000 degrees, and I will last for just on 2.1 seconds. It's hardly eternity. What do you think? And some more disgusting claims about what adoption would be. Well, sir, I've got 3 fantastic adopted kids. I know how good adoption is, and I found some of it just disgraceful. I found some of the bullying tactics really evil. And, sir, I gave up being scared of bullies when I was at primary school. However, a huge amount of the opposition was from moderates, from people who were concerned, who were seriously worried what this might do to the fabric of our society. I respect their concern. I respect their worry. They were worried about what it might do to their families and so on. Let me repeat to them now, sir. All we are doing with this bill is allowing 2 people who love each other to have that love recognised by way of marriage. That is all we are doing. We are not declaring nuclear war on a foreign state. We are not bringing a virus in that could wipe out our agriculture sector forever. We are allowing 2 people who love each other to have that recognised, and I can't see what's wrong with that for love nor money, sir. I just cannot. I cannot understand why someone would be opposed. I understand why people don't like what it is that others do. That's fine. We're all in that category. But I give a promise to those people who are opposed to this bill right now. I give you a watertight, guaranteed promise. The sun will still rise tomorrow. Your teenage daughter will still argue back with you as if she knows everything. Your mortgage will not grow. You will not have skin diseases or rashes or toads in your bed, sir. The world will just carry on. So don't make this into a big deal. This is fantastic for the people it affects, but for the rest of us, life will go on. And finally, can I say, sir, one of the messages I had was that this bill was the cause of our drought. This bill was the cause of our drought. Well, if any of you follow my Twitter account, you will see that in the Pakuranga electorate this morning, it was pouring with rain. We have the most enormous big gay rainbow across my electorate. It has to be a sign, sir. It has to be a sign. If you're a believer, it's certainly a sign. And can I finish for all those who are concerned about this with a quote from the Bible? It's Deuteronomy. I thought Deuteronomy was a cat out of cats, but never mind. It's Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 29. Be ye not afraid.
Fantastic. And as I said, he declares himself an economic conservative.
And it worked because the bill passed.
Yes.
And there was a really beautiful thing that happened when the bill passed. So we wanted to include that and show you that too.
Order. Members and the gallery, can I just ask that you refrain from any comment? There will be a waiata after the clerk has announced the 3rd reading, but I just ask so that we can get the procedures of the House completed. Members, the ayes are 77, the noes are 44.
Marriage, definition of marriage amendment bill, third reading.
Now, I understand.
I'm all choked up watching that. What are we going to have to do in the future to get so excited and joyous and
I
everything?
want to know if we can go to our Congress and sing in the balcony like that.
We shall overcome.
Okay, that'd be fine. Well, congratulations, New Zealand. You did it right and just beautifully. And all of that is on YouTube.
Okay,
if you want to see
Australia,
it
it's on
again.
you now.
Now, there was one other thing that we saw this week that popped up on YouTube that was very, very impressive. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Now, we've seen him and shown him.
I've seen him in person do a pro-gay speech.
I've seen him show up at AIDS memorial events and make very moving speeches. But recently he made a speech, a video that was a message to the International Conference on Human Rights, and that is posted on the UN YouTube channel. And it is so forthright and moving that I guess this is the moving portion of the show. We thought you would like to see UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
Your Excellency, Espen Barth Eide, Foreign Minister of Norway, Your Excellency, Minister for Women's Rights of the French Republic, Najat Vallaud-Belkacem, Excellencies, distinguished friends, I am pleased to greet the participants in this important conference. We should all be outraged when people suffer discrimination, assault, and even murder, simply because they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. We should all speak out when someone is arrested and imprisoned because of who they love or how they look. This is one of the great neglected human rights challenges of our time. We must right these wrongs. Governments have a legal duty to protect everyone, but far too many still refuse to acknowledge the injustice of homophobic violence and discrimination. We need to document this problem and share information with the states on a regular basis for discussion and action. We must institutionalize our efforts to address discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. We need public education to change popular attitudes. Some will oppose change. They may invoke culture, tradition, or religion to defend the status quo. Such arguments have been used to try to justify slavery, child marriage, rape in marriage, and female genital mutilation. I respect culture, tradition, and religion, but they can never justify the denial of basic rights. My promise to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender members of the human family is this: I'm with you I promise that as the Secretary General of the United Nations, I will denounce attacks against you, and I will keep pressing leaders for progress. I'm committed to leading a global campaign in partnership with the United Nations Human Rights Office. I count on others to join us. Together, we can make the world safer, freer, and more equal for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. He's terrific.
He is terrific.
And so clear. I just hope he says it in his next meeting with the Pope.
Can we get the Vatican kicked out of the UN?
Well, you know, it's ridiculous that.
What do they have, observer
Vatican
status?
City has status in the UN.
I know.
You know, Central Park is bigger.
All right, let's move on to AIDS news. Well, there's a new report out from the Centers for Disease Control which confirmed some preliminary data they released a few months ago. And what it's looking at is new HIV diagnoses over the last few years. It's looking specifically at 2009 to 2011 because that's the most recent, analyzed data they have. So here's what they say. There were 50,000 new HIV diagnoses in 2011, which was up just not quite 4% from a couple of years earlier. Not great news, but, it's surprising and discouraging that there are new diagnoses.
After we did our show with Dr. Dimitri last week, I heard from a clinical psychologist who's a longtime viewer, and he said he's worked with young people for years, and he says there's this element of those who engage in unsafe sex so as to get infected and get it over with.
We've heard about that.
Well, we have, but it's very hard. It's very hard to convey when it is no longer this lethal disease. That
not
people,
perceived as a lethal.
Well, I mean, it's obviously, as he says, no walk in the park to take a pill every day or pills every day for the rest of your life, but we can't fight it the same way, and I'm not hearing what the strategy really is that works.
Well,
and I welcome
look,
you to,
if we knew what the strategy was that worked, we'd be using it. But certainly we need to reinforce our educational efforts and our behavioral efforts.
But how? But doing what?
Well, first of all, by talking about it, which very few people do outside of AIDS organizations and us. And the cities still have to, we talked with Dimitri about how we need a subway poster campaign for pre-exposure prophylaxis and post-exposure prophylaxis. Right. People don't know enough still. And the lessons in schools, I got an email from a viewer, a high school student, I think in Arizona, who was trying to raise issues around blood donations, and the school just wouldn't talk about it. And I asked him about the education at the school, and he said it's really very minimal and only in middle school and not in high school, and it's a mess out there. Wow. So anyway, what I wanted to say about these new CDC figures is new diagnoses up 4% over a 2 or 3 year period, but new diagnoses in men having sex with men up 11% over this period. I mean, this is not just static, this is rising among particularly young men having sex with men. 30,000 new diagnoses in 2011. New diagnoses are going down among heterosexual men and women.
That's why I do want to do this article and talk to young men about how they stay negative and what's their strategy for that.
And how people are feeling about safe sex or various prevention strategies. I understand people feeling stressed about having to negotiate this all the time. And when someone says, people want to get it over with, that's wanting to get beyond that stress.
Sure.
And so we have to make it easier for people. That's always been the issue. We have to make it easy for people and routine for people to practice safe sex.
Well, our state senator, Brad Holman, is making it easier for people to get the meningitis vaccine. He went to a department of the state, and they are telling insurance companies, you've got to cover the meningitis vaccine. And that's good. Although we heard from a viewer who said Medicare doesn't cover it. And, that's bad, but you can get it at health departments in many places.
Well, I was happy to be with some ACT UP alumni last night at a meeting, and someone said, so how many of you have had the vaccine? And basically they all raised their hands. They've all gone and gotten the meningitis vaccine, which I think is great.
Good. Some ancient history was retreaded over again. There's a new book out. You heard about, remember, Patient Zero, Gaetan Dugas. This is Randy Schilt's book, and the band played on. He had about this rather sensationalistic focus on a airline steward who he called Patient Zero. And this is what was picked up by the press. But basically, the publicity people for his book just said, yeah, this is the way we're going to sell this book. And it turns out that, you know, it is not. He wasn't obviously the first one who spread it to everybody.
It's ridiculous.
But it created a lot of fear.
Well, it's a mixed story. First of all, Michael Denneny, who was his editor on the book, says it took him a week to talk Randy into using this story as a publicity.
Which became the headline in 60 Minutes,
right.
The 60 Minutes piece.
And those of us who were working in the field in 1987, which is when And the Band Played On was published, knew it was ridiculous to pin the spread of the virus on one flight attendant, and convenient as that image was.
And it really lost the message, central message of the book, which was about government inaction, although Randy also blamed it on us and the gay movement for, like he said, we were too embarrassed to do anything, which is a lie.
But it stigmatized gay men.
Sure.
It put out this whole image of
Typhoid Mary. He even used the phrase in the book.
And unprotected, irresponsible sex. But there are also people who say, yes, it was horrible and sensationalistic, but it brought a lot of attention to AIDS that wasn't there. Yes, a lot of attention. But all of this is discussed in this new book called Plain Queer, Plane, Queer, Labor, Sexuality, and AIDS in the History of Male Flight Attendants by Phil Tiemeyer, who's an historian at Philadelphia University. And it sounds quite fascinating.
And congratulations to our friends at Broadway Cares. The only reason I'm sorry I had to go to Colorado is because I missed the Easter bonnet competition. They raised $4.2 million in this session for this, and it sounded like an awfully fun party.
Great.
All right, entertainment news? We have any time left?
Yes, we do. You know, the much anticipated, I am sitting in front of my television just waiting for this on May 26th, Behind the Candelabra, the Michael Douglas and...
May 26th?
Yes, Matt Damon
as the lover.
Liberace movie. It's competing at Cannes in the film festival.
Maybe it's great art.
Okay.
The Normal Heart, which is going to star Julia Roberts. This is Larry Kramer's great AIDS play, finally turned into a movie. Julia Roberts and Mark Ruffalo in the leads, is premiering on HBO in 2014 with Matt Bomer playing Felix Turner, who was the lover of Ned Weeks, played by Mark Ruffalo.
In a smaller production called Married and Counting, a nice little independent film is opening this weekend at the Quad Theater here in New York. It'll be available this Friday, playing through next Thursday. The stars and director will be at the 7:15 showings every day. It'll be available on iTunes and video on demand at the end of June. Here's this movie, these two nice guys who have been together now for 27 years. They decided to celebrate by going around the country, a road trip to every place where they could get married legally and getting married.
They're addicted to it.
Well,
they're trying to bring attention to the issue.
It looks really good, and we have a little clip of it, so we thought we'd show you that.
We should just go to get married in every single state where it's allowed.
We are road tripping to get to all of the areas in the United States where gay marriage is legal.
Oh, watch out! This is wedding stress.
I am having the most beautiful, most fun, most romantic trip in the history of the world.
There will now be a mandatory dance break.
Do you want your father to come to our wedding?
If I were a criminal, he would visit me in jail. But as a happy, free gay man, he won't come to my wedding.
we are working to have maximum amount of equal protection under the law.
I wondered what I would vow that I haven't vowed every day for 24.5 years.
I love you. You are my best friend.
Well, how can anybody object to love? How can anybody object to love?
So, see, it looks very charming. That'll be at the Quad starting this weekend.
Couple of gay plays in New York, and I hope coming to you sometime because they're good. Who's Your Daddy, starring Johnny O'Callaghan. We got his picture there. He's an Irish actor who lives in L.A. He leads this totally dissolute life that he tells us all about. It's a true story. Goes with a friend to Uganda. She wants to visit an orphanage. He doesn't have any idea of, adopting a kid. He falls in love with this kid, or the kid falls in love with him, and then the rest of the play is about his efforts, crazy efforts, to adopt this kid. And it's quite moving. By the end of it, you're rooting for the guy. And then the gayest play really in New York is The Nance. The Nance, not a common phrase, but in burlesque it was the very swishy, effeminate character, usually played by a straight man. Well, now it's being a character who is gay playing the Nance in burlesque, and it's played by Nathan Lane. And I was a little, this is Douglas Carter Bean, I was a little, trepidatious about this, but it is really terrific and quite moving. I mean, it's a really good play, and
Douglas Carter Bean's a wonderful writer.
It's really about an affair that he has with a young gay guy who he meets surreptitiously in the village. You had to meet surreptitiously in the village in the 1930s, and trying to really have love in a time when you're just totally repressed. So I recommend The Nance. I don't recommend Richard Greenberg's The Assembled Parties, another drawing room comedy on the Upper West Side. Sorry. That's all I'm going to say about it.
You don't have to apologize.
No.
All right, just remember, those of you seen us on Free Speech, that they're in pledge mode, and we will be aired Saturday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern and maybe Tuesday afternoons. Maybe check
yes,
the
Tuesday, I think around 2:30, something like that.
Okay.
Eastern.
Yeah, and we will see you next week with more news.
And thanks for being with us.
Yeah. Bye.
And hello to all my new friends in Colorado.
And my old ones.
Right. You go way back in Colorado.
Way back.
That was only my second visit.
Bye.
Bye.